This computer. Kia ora and welcome to Love Literacy Inspired, a podcast where we explore real stories behind Aotearoa's literacy journeys. I'm Heather Down, founder of Love Literacy and passionate advocate for structured evidence-based teaching. So each episode, I'm sitting down with inspiring New Zealanders, teachers, parents, advocates, and learners to hear how literacy has shaped their lives, their work, and their hearts. Whether you're in the classroom, at the kitchen table, or just keen to learn, I'm so glad you're here. So let's dive in today. And today I've got the lovely Nicky Collins with us. Thank you so much for joining me today. And just going to start out with asking you if you can share a little bit about yourself with everybody.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for having me. It's an honour to be asked. I'm Nicky Collins. I'm the Resource Teacher of Literacy, or RTLit, based in Whanganui. This is a position I've held for 5 years. I've been married for 45 years to John, my husband, and I've got two daughters, Hayley and Courtney, and I've got a granddaughter, Peyton, who is almost 15, and I've got two lovely step-grandchildren as well, who are 14 and 12. So it's a busy life, but it's great.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I bet that keeps you super busy.
It does.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So jumping into your literacy journey. So currently you are a resource teacher of literacy. But we were having a little chit chat before we got together, and you let me know you haven't always had this role. So I was quite excited to find out a little bit more about that. So can you talk me through your teaching journey?
Well, my teaching journey started quite late in life. I went to Teachers College when I was 40, but I've always had a love of literacy. I've always been a reader, and I grew up in a house where we didn't really have books. We weren't very well off, and we didn't have books, but we used to get pocket money and we'd save it up. And my twin sister and I can remember us rushing to the dairy to buy comics. And so we just used to devour comics, and we read them until they were threadbare. And but we were regular visitors to the library, to the public library, which was great. I didn't really get hooked into reading novels until I was at secondary school, and I remember I was in the fifth form and reading a book called A Town Like Alice that was a class book, and I was just blown away that you could go to different places and different ideas and lifestyles within a book. And I actually left school before I finished the book, and I remember going to the public library and getting my first adult novel book out, A Town Like Alice, and feeling really grown up when I checked out. But yeah, I left school at 15. I had no qualifications. I left in the April of my fifth form year because I'd been offered a hairdressing apprenticeship. And off I went to hairdressing for 21 years. One of my teachers actually told my employer not to employ me. She said, "You'll regret it because she talks too much."
Oh my
But
gosh.
anyway, what's better for a hairdresser than someone that talks too much? So I worked as a hairdresser for 21 years, and the last 6 of those I developed chronic repetitive strain injury. So I battled for a while, and then I got to the stage where my left arm was pretty much useless. So I actually had to give up hairdressing, and I was devastated. And I thought I'd have 3 months off and then I'd go back to work of some sort of job. But it actually took 3 years to recover. And during this time, I started to volunteer. Once I started to feel a bit better, I volunteered at hospice and I volunteered in my daughter's schools. And the feeling I got walking back into schools was completely different to when I was at school, because I didn't like it. I flunked my way through everything. And I really loved it. So I was doing kind of remedial reading, listening to groups and things like that. And I just absolutely loved it. And so then one day I just happened to be getting my hair cut back at the salon where I used to work. And beside me was a principal that I knew. And he asked me what I'd been doing while I hadn't been working. And I told him that I'd been volunteering in schools. And he said, "Well, we've got a teacher aide job going. Are you interested?" And I said, yeah, I would be. I'll come and see you. So I ended up working a couple of years as a teacher aide. And they said to me, "You've got to go to Teachers College." And I said, "There's no way I could go to Teachers College. I didn't pass anything at school." They said, "Give one paper a go, do human development and give it a go." So I did, and I got an A. And so I was just delighted. So off I went to Teachers College. I studied extramurally for 3 years because my girls were teenagers. And that was hard, but my family were really supportive. And we got there in the end. And yeah, so I went teaching from there. I went back to the school that I'd worked at as a teacher aide for a few years, and then went to a different school, and then onwards and onwards. Yeah, onwards
Oh,
through to,
yeah.
yeah. So I was
Oh.
really proud to graduate the
Mhm.
first time with my my teaching, um, whatever it is,
Degree. Yep.
degree.
Yep.
That's the word I'm
Degree.
looking
Yes.
for.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah. And then went on to train as an RTLB, which I did that job for 5 years, and then RTLit, and I'm going into my fifth year of RTLit.
And so when
So
you first jumped back into the classroom, like that must have felt really strange because there's a lot of time passed from the age of 15,
yes,
obviously, to so you in your 40s, we won't give an age, but within your 40s. So the classroom that you left would have been incredibly different to the classroom that you entered into.
oh, it definitely was very different. Yeah, it was a smallish Catholic school, and I can remember my first day. I sat down in front of my class and feeling very nervous, and I put my foot back and accidentally knocked the radio on, one of the little radios the under the chair, and this little voice came on and said, "Good morning, boys and girls." And that was my introduction to. Didn't even have to say good morning to my class. It just happened to be the little ad that was on the radio.
Oh,
And I
that
did this
must have.
fabulous maths lesson. I can remember this. And I said at the end, has anyone got any questions? And this first hand went up. And my very first question as a teacher was, Mrs. Collins, where did you get your earrings from? Did you get them from Anna S?
Isn't that wonderful though? But the whole thing is that obviously the rapport had built up enough. Like you must have felt, wow, I'm doing the right thing. I'm so glad that I did this.
And no, I just loved it right from the word go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy, but I just loved it. And I
Yeah.
loved the literacy side of it. Yeah, of
Yeah.
teaching.
So
Yeah.
that must have been, I can sort of see, feeling passion for teaching, getting into being a classroom teacher, and then going on to your resource teacher of literacy. Um, where in that little time period did you find yourself getting quite passionate about literacy? Like, what was your turning point in there that made you think, you know what, there's more for me?
So when I was in my well, actually in my first school, within my second year, I'd been asked to train as a reading recovery teacher. Um, and so that was, at the time, I thought, wow, this is quite amazing. Normally we don't have year two teachers getting reading recovery jobs, but anyway, they probably had no one else, I don't know. And so I I took that role on, and then I left soon after that and went somewhere else. But I remember at my second school, I had some children that were clearly dyslexic. I didn't know anything about dyslexia at the time. So, and I thought, well, what am I going to do? I have to find out about this. So I did some training and, basically do your own research and made some adaptations and found out a lot of stuff. And I thought, oh, okay. So, and it made a big difference. And I had lots of feedback from parents. And from then I was asked to work throughout the school doing some PD for all the teachers and the teacher aides, and doing some remedial groups with the year six classes. So yes, that's when I kind of thought, oh, I think I've got some strengths, or I love this, so in that area. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
And we didn't know a lot about dyslexia. I mean, we're still learning a lot
Yeah,
about dyslexia.
right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's an ongoing, even though the research has been around for such a long time, it's just something that we haven't really looked at. So
Research takes such a long time to get into classrooms, into schools, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Such
it
a long
really
time.
does. It really
Mm.
does. So just building on that again, was there a student or mentor or a moment that shaped then the pathway that you were heading towards?
Um, well, I think if we're talking about structured literacy, that came along a bit later, but there was
Mm.
definitely students that made me look into dyslexia.
Yep.
Um, and I can remember a parent coming in and telling me that they went past their son's bedroom last night and they couldn't make out what the noise was. And he was reading out loud to himself, and he had never read out loud. He would not read at home. He absolutely hated reading, and he was reading a little kid's novel to himself out loud, and the whole family stood outside his bedroom and cried because they'd never heard him read. And that was just by making changes to my approach and
Yeah.
doing the best I knew with what I knew. I do things differently now, of course. But yeah, that made me think, wow, the way you teach makes such a difference. And, there were just some simple changes. But yeah, that was a moment where I thought, wow, I've got to learn more about dyslexia and how to teach these kids that are just not learning.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
And so,
so,
and so when from that aha moment, or I mean, obviously it was very, very impactful for, or profoundly impactful for the parents and for that student opening up that pathway to literacy. So where did your journey take you from there?
um, from there, I spent quite a lot of time. In fact, I'd forgotten about this until I was talking to someone today who reminded me. And do you remember when the ACET teaching qualification came out, the Advanced Classroom Expertise Teacher? When that came out, I was recommended to give it a go and apply. And when I started to do that and put all the information around the learning, the PLD I'd run around dyslexia, I thought, and when I was awarded that,
Mm,
there were so many in New Zealand that in that first year, I was delighted, and I thought, well, this is somewhere where I want to go. So um, then a couple of years later, I had a really diverse class. There was lots of kids with some kind of neurodiversity, ADHD, ADD, OCD, you name it, it was in my classroom, and they were 5-year-olds. And I really had to, I don't know, because I didn't really know much about
mm,
neurodiversity, and I had to research myself and find out about these adaptations. And I remember RTLB coming in and saying, well, there's nothing we can recommend that you're not already doing, but we can work with
mm.
the family, which was fantastic. And that gave me the courage and the confidence to look further to see where I could use my skills. And that's when I applied for an RTLB job. And within that role, I really favoured the literacy referrals,
Yes.
and tended to get offered those quite often. And I was very proud of my little balanced literacy approach that I was trotting around schools at the time. And yeah, so some change was to come, of course,
Mm.
but we can get to that if you like shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. So I think that probably would lead me into there was obviously we must have had like a little point because you mentioned balanced literacy. Yeah, for me it's really interesting. I'll just talk a little bit about for me it's very interesting because I came into my literacy journey not with a teaching background. So I never taught anything around, balanced literacy or whole language. I only taught the way I teach now. So I find that side of it quite fascinating. So
mm,
there must have been a pivot point for you, uh, whether it was a person, a course that you went on, or something. Can you talk me through the that
sure.
point?
So I think it was the end of 2018, and we had an end of year staff meeting with RTLB,
Mm,
and within the cluster 25 of RTLB, fielding is part of that. And so the fielding team were over in Whanganui, and one of the RTLB, her name was Trish, she did a presentation on multisensory language and structured literacy. And I sat there and thought, wow, this makes sense. This is amazing. I'm going to shoulder tap her and I'm going to shadow her next year. I was really
mm,
excited. And then she said at the end of the presentation, and I'm leaving to go back to the classroom. And I was really disappointed.
mm.
But the next year, we got a new RTLB who was also from Fielding. And of course, Fielding is Liz Kane territory. So they were well ahead of the game in terms of literacy,
Yeah,
structured literacy.
very
Yes,
progressive in the Manawatu. Yeah.
yes, that's right. And so we got this new RTLB called Kirsten, who had worked at Lytton Street School with Liz when Liz was RTLit there for about 6 years. So she already knew a lot, and we felt like we had our own mini Liz. And so she came and she told us about structured literacy, and she did her MSL training, which was great. And so I just followed her. I asked her questions. She modelled. She showed me stuff. She was very patient with me. She let me come to interventions. She let me come to meetings with teachers. She was doing a little mini project, so I was able to shadow her with that. And she was really kind when I was still hanging on to a couple of those last, balanced literacy resources. And then when I finally ditched them all and they went in the rubbish bin, that was a photo-worthy moment. But so, yeah, we were really lucky in the Whanganui area too. She really brought structured literacy to Whanganui. And from there, I just went on and, learned as much as I could. I went to my first Liz Kane workshop in 2018,
Mm,
loved it, been to many, many, many since then.
mm.
And there's been, lots of people that have shaped my journey over that time. Yourself, I've followed you for a long time, and
Thank you.
Liz and lots of other local experts or national experts, and Emma Nana, I've followed her a lot.
Yes.
Been really lucky in my job as RTLit to have met and in person and been to workshops with Anita Archer and
Wow.
Nathaniel Swain and
Oh,
Jan
yeah.
Hasbrook and Nancy Young.
Yep.
I can't think, but very lucky to have learned from so many incredible national and international experts.
Yeah, and I think that the field that's out there right now with national and international experts, we've got so much knowledge out there now.
We
Um,
have.
I sort of feel like in the last 5 years we've gone from 0 to 100, and people are connecting the dots everywhere and making connections everywhere. It's really exciting to see.
Yeah, it
Mm,
sure is. Yeah.
mm.
And with online webinars, there's so
Yes,
much we can access without leaving the
yes.
country. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. So, at the moment, you work with around 30 schools. Did you say
Yes,
30,
yes.
34?
Yeah, it's about 34 on my
About 34?
roll. Some of
How
those
do,
are kura, so they don't generally refer, but yeah,
yep,
there's 34, so it's quite a lot.
it's quite a, how do you manage that wide scope? Um,
Well, some schools just don't refer to RT Lit. In the past, there's always been a shortage. So
mm,
um, some schools have known that they could wait for a year to get a referral. So we're really lucky in this area. In Cluster 25, we've got a really strong RTLB as well. So
mm,
there's lots of really strong literacy experts within RTLB. And so sometimes I say, well, pop a referral into me and RTLB and we'll see who gets there first. Um, and I work in collaboration with RTLB a bit. Sometimes I might start a referral and they continue, or the other way around, which works really well.
mm,
I do a lot of indirect support as well as direct support. So
mm,
sometimes if I can't pick up a referral straight away, I'll go and work with the teacher and give some guidance and advice. And PLD, I do loads of workshops for, a number of teachers at a time. So just trying to work directly and indirectly so that I can support as many schools as possible. Yeah.
mm,
So,
mm. Yeah,
but it's not
yeah,
always easy.
not always easy. Yeah. Um, my next question was I wanted to explore a little bit more on the advocacy side. Um, because yeah, I did do a little bit of research, and we were talking just before, actually, before we sat down, and you did have some involvement in something called the Whanganui Literacy Project. So could you give me a little bit of a background on what
Sure.
you
So
did there and achieved there?
there's quite a history that actually goes back to 2019 with the literacy project. So it started with RTLB. There was a couple of little projects that happened first, little trials, and then they kind of grew over the next few years. And the first bigger project they did, I just started as RTLit, and I was really busy, and there was a backlog, and I had to get cracking. So I kind of just dipped and dived and didn't really get too involved. But the next year I thought, well, this is silly. This is literacy. I need to be involved. So I worked much more closely with Rebecca Wells and the team. And we delivered these 2 years of projects. So we had one stage, we had about 100 teachers and teacher aides involved. And that was through COVID. We delivered, via Zoom during COVID as well. And they ran over 2 terms. And we had a workshop every 2 weeks and after school, and we did it ourselves the first round. And the second round we thought, oh, actually we need to bring in, we were kind of like we were building the plane as we were flying it, because we were learning as well. We were just really one step ahead. And the second year of big projects, we decided to get some experts in, and we had people zooming in, like Liz and Em and Anna and various people. I just can't remember their names now, but lots of people from around New Zealand zooming in and chatting to us as well, which was really, really fantastic. Um, and then in the third year, we did a lot of coaching and mentoring. So that's how we finished up, just trying to get structured literacy into a large number of schools at a systemic level, but also in a way that it can be sustainable, and that was implemented with fidelity. And yeah, it was a really fantastic opportunity for schools and for us. It was a learning curve.
Yeah.
And as a result, Rebecca and I got invited to to present at sharing best practice in Christchurch and then Auckland around that approach, the model. And I know that other RTLBs within the country used that same model, adopted that model, and started to run their own projects. So yeah, it was fantastic.
Oh, that's a huge achievement. That
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
absolutely amazing. And what I found with COVID, like COVID was like the best of times and the worst of times.
yes,
It did in terms of highlighting some key things for literacy, I think it definitely did that, didn't it? And it
it did.
also
Yes,
uh, I mean, a lot of parents suddenly
parents.
discovered, oh my goodness, my children are
Yeah,
not able to write a sentence.
absolutely. Or read a word. Yeah,
Read a word, yeah. So we had some interesting observations going on, but it was also a chance to deliver all of these workshops and all of this professional development
yes.
digitally in a way that hadn't been done before.
Absolutely. Yeah, no,
Mm.
it was a challenge because
Yeah.
yeah, when you're doing Zoom and even the presentations when we had, 50, 60 people in the room,
Mm,
and some rural schools were zooming in,
mm.
and I used to say we're not the Ellen show. We don't have a microphone to run around the audience because people that were zooming couldn't hear questions being asked. They could hear the answers. So it was certainly a challenge, but RTLB have got a really forward-thinking cluster manager, Jade Wakeling, and she was so supportive, and she did everything she could to make sure that we got to as many schools and supported as many teachers as possible. And we had teacher aides in there as well. And yeah, it was really, really good. It really got Whanganui going.
Yeah.
Yeah, structured literacy. Most schools were involved to some degree. Yeah.
Ah, that is amazing. I've loved listening to this. So just a little bit more on the equity and advocacy. I would love you to talk to me about dyslexia awareness. So dyslexia, obviously my son is dyslexic, dysgraphic, dyscalculic. So school was a difficult place for him. And he was my inspiration with how I began my journey. And one of the things that I decided I wanted to get involved in was Dyslexia Awareness Week because I had felt that there wasn't any representation for it. And yet, so 2023, I started that, and then 2024, last year, you jumped on board, and I was just blown away with what you did. So and I'm still like, I'm so glad you're helping me this year because you've got so much knowledge around that. But
Okay.
um, talk us through what you did for Dyslexia Awareness Week last year.
So last year, well, the year before, when we did the light up, I
Yes.
had
Oh,
the
yes, we
Memorial
did
Hall
too.
and the
Yep.
Opera House. We've
Yep.
just managed to get those two buildings lit up in Aqua. But last year, I thought we need to take it to a new level. So I approached Pack and Save, and I had some history with the family there. So I knew that they would be on board. And so they were really happy to sponsor this massive billboard, electronic billboard, which was fabulous,
That's
in town for
amazing.
2 weeks. And we had a massive display in the store, and I worked with a couple of schools to create the visuals. And my darling granddaughter Paige sat painstakingly and helped me cut them out and build them up at home. Um, and so we had that massive display in Pack and Save, and they had posters printed. They were incredible. We had another business, Mike Buchanan Plumbing, and they lit up their building in Aqua. They had a flag made they designed a flag, which you've seen,
Yes,
and had
yes,
that
I've got mine. I can't wait to
to fly it.
display it this
Sorry,
year.
it's so large.
Mm.
So
Bigger the
it
better.
was the office lady there that created that flag, and so that was our billboard and our flag and our posters and everything we had made. We also had the Memorial Hall and the Opera House lit up again, but I decided we needed to get it into schools. So I approached my schools and I had a few come on board. We had a Whanganui Dyslexia Awareness Day, and so all the children came to school dressed in aqua. The schools shared it on their Facebook pages. There was a book that was available that I printed out for all of the schools that were involved. So they got this free resource to upskill themselves about dyslexia, and they shared that knowledge. I recommended videos and books, and I went around and visited some of the schools. I spoke in assembly and described what it's like to be dyslexic. One of the darling boys I worked with, he chose that he wanted to actually talk to his school. He was only about 8. And so he went to each class and talked about what life was like for him with dyslexia, which was incredible because he was a shy wee man. So that was pretty awesome. And so yeah, this year we're hoping to go bigger and better. I want to get more schools and have a Whanganui Dyslexia Awareness Day, and yeah, let everyone know that every classroom has several dyslexic children in them, and we need to make sure our practice aligns with how they need to learn. That's
Ah,
exciting.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if we think we've got, if we say 20% neurodiverse, maybe not 20% specifically dyslexic, but
Um, um,
20% neurodiverse, and in some way that neurodiversity might affect the sounds, phoneme, grapheme, sounds and symbol correspondences.
mm,
And that's actually quite a large chunk of a classroom that we need to be mindful of.
mm,
And I think that it's that lower 2% are profoundly so, or 2 to 5% are profoundly so, and they're going to be in every class. So
yeah,
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 yeah.
definitely.
And the other thing I wanted to talk about was you curated a list of books last year as well,
Yeah,
which
so when I wanted to do this dyslexia awareness day in schools,
yeah.
and I imagined going to schools and reading a story about a child that has dyslexia, but I couldn't
Mm,
find anything. The library, the children's librarian, she's trawled through all her books to see if she could find anything, couldn't find anything, and went online and found a number of books. So I went into the bookshops and they didn't have them or hadn't heard of them. And
mm,
so I
mm,
went to a couple of bookshops and they recommended I contact head office, which I did, um, to see whether they had them. And they said no, but if you had some, we'd be happy to look
mm,
into getting them. So I went online, did a bit of research, asked around, and managed to compile a list of books that were children's picture books, but the children in them had dyslexia. So I sent that off to head office at Paper Plus, and they were going to send it round to their branches because they're all privately owned. So it's up to the branches to stock those. And went to the local bookshop, where the Pages bookshop, where they were really happy to look into it. So yeah, so hopefully they've appeared on bookshelves, but yeah, I'm
yeah,
not sure,
yeah,
to be honest.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I think
but it was good to raise that awareness.
oh yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, and I think I took your curated list and I popped a blog post together. So we must share that out. We'll
That'd be
we'll pop
great.
pop that in there as well. And yeah, because it's everything starts with awareness. And then from there we can ask the questions.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So how do you think your understanding of effective literacy has changed over the years? Because you came in at the tail end of one way of teaching,
Yes.
you fashioned your own style of teaching and resources, you attended some really amazing professional development. So yeah, how's your understanding of effective teaching changed?
Well, I think we used to think of literacy as reading, writing, oral language, spelling, and everyone thinks they're in their own lane. But now it's very different. Of course, it's literacy, reading and writing part of the, either side of the same coin, and they sit on that bed of oral language. So I think that is different. We just don't do them separately anymore. There's all that explicit teaching around spelling, teaching spelling patterns and rules rather than spelling words that'll never be used again. And when I first started this journey, I learned a lot about the science of reading, but now I'm learning about the science of learning, and I'm just loving that. I'm reading Dr.
Fascinating, isn't
Nathaniel
it?
Swain's book at the moment, and it's so good. And yeah, I'm learning around the working memory and cognitive overload and lots of like retrieval and opportunities to respond and checking for understanding. But my latest learning has been around the physical environment. And, we go into these schools where there's beautiful art everywhere and they're hanging over the children's heads. But the way we should be doing it now is that a lot of that is removed because it's extraneous load. And just the distractions, like, the caretaker is not outside your room blowing the leaves at literacy time or maths time. Or the intercom's not saying, can Nicky Collins come to the office and get her lunch, please, and things like that. We need to be reducing all of that extraneous information and just thinking about attention and how we can all learn using the science of learning for any curriculum area. That explicit teaching is done a lot better than it used to be, and I'm a great fan of Anita Archer with all her Archerisms and the I do, we do, you do, doing a lot more of the we do rather than I do and then you do, and there's nothing in between. And probably one of the biggest learning curves that I've learned about teaching literacy is the importance of review. We used to teach something one day and we think, oh, they've got that, so I'll teach something the next day and the next day. But if you don't go back and review it and retrieve it, it'll be gone and it doesn't go into your long-term memory. So Liz Kane says, all of the learning happens in the review, and it's just so true. And with my interventions and, a lot of RTLit review is part of every single lesson, and sometimes your lesson is only review. So, that's a real key component of structured literacy.
Yeah, yeah, I find that fascinating as well, and especially with neurodiverse learners, we don't know how many reviews
That's
we
right.
might need in order for whatever we're teaching, whether it's a spelling rule or a phoneme grapheme correspondence or something along those lines to shift into the long-term memory. And yeah, I found the science of learning quite fascinating with how we do need to have a little bit of a chance to forget.
Yes.
So we need to forget it
Yep.
in order to then bring it back, because the next
Yep.
time we bring it back, it's easier to bring it back until it reaches that
Until it's
reaches.
there, yeah. And that
Yeah.
retrieval has to be planned, it's in a week and then it's 2 weeks and so on and so on,
Yes.
gradually,
Yes, so we haven't
working
left
over
too
time.
long. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
and
interesting.
then the fascinating thing too is that once we've mapped it to that long-term memory, I just find the really fascinating thing about reading is that once we've learned to read that word, that connection is permanently made in the brain, and we will never forget,
That's right.
barring a traumatic head injury, but we will never
Yes,
forget how to read
that's right. You
that
can't
word.
unread a word, can
You
you?
can
Once you know it, you can't not read it. Yeah,
that's it. Our brain won't unlearn it. So
no,
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, that's really amazing. So I was gonna ask the question here. If you had a wish for every teacher in Aotearoa, uh, and wish what they knew. I'm not phrasing that very well. What do you wish every teacher in Aotearoa knew about teaching reading and writing? Gosh, that came out in a jumble.
I guess I wish that they and I know many of them do, that importance of that alphabetic principle. This is the sound. This
Yep.
is the letter that or the letters that represent the sound. And the knowledge that teachers have to have. They have to understand how language works. And if the teachers don't have that knowledge themselves, they can't teach it. And I think you don't have to have it all. You can learn as you go along. You can learn as your next lesson as you're teaching it, but the teachers have to have that knowledge themselves. I was working with a teacher today and I was talking about when to use C and when to use K, and she wasn't really sure. And she was honest about it. And, she was a great speller, but she'd never taught that particular spelling pattern. And so, it's great that people are honest, and she's happy for me to go in and model that. But the teachers have to have that knowledge as well. So before they can teach it, because you can't teach what you don't know. So yeah.
It's so true. And it sounds like me with my learning journey. And I sort of feel like there are some times when I get students sitting in front of me and they're saying things like, oh, why does this do this? Or why does this do this? And I say, you know what? Let's find out.
Find out. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to it. But I think if we can ignite the spark and ignite the passion, uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for teachers to dive deep, then yeah,
And
then
what I've been looking at a lot lately is that whole class reading and the whole class writing, how
mm,
we're moving towards that, which is fascinating. And I can really see how you can do whole class reading, the same content, but with different support. So your support is differentiated. So you might do a whole class reading session, but you'll still have your intervention groups where you'll work with those children, maybe with a decodable text, those ones that need it. And the same with the structured writing. We're moving away from, going to school at 5 and being expected to write about your weekend on day one. And let's face it, every Monday for the rest of their school life, their primary school life. Now we're looking at the foundational knowledge that has to be developed first, getting them to know what a sound is, a word is, a sentence is, getting one sentence right before moving on. Because there's
yeah.
plenty of time to write about your weekend when, you've got all those foundations in place. So, and using
Mm,
those rich texts to develop world knowledge and vocabulary and develop comprehension. Because if you don't have that,
mm,
and the way to do that is through your whole class. And it also reduces the workload for teachers because they don't have to plan for 7 reading groups and 3 writing groups. They can do whole class intervention, a whole class teaching, and then some intervention as well. So yeah, it does
mm,
make quite a big difference. Yeah.
mm,
And recent PLD I went to, several teachers talked about their whole class teaching how it had been a game changer and changing their physical environment, and both had been a game changer. And one of our local teachers actually came back from those 3 days of PLD, went into her classroom on Sunday, took everything off the walls apart from behind them, and turned all the tables around so they all face the teacher, so the teacher can always see every face, and every student can see the teacher. And the kids came in and said, "Wow," and they loved it. And she explained why. And so yeah, it is making a difference. It's just making those little changes.
And I think if we really knuckle down to why we're teaching for learning outcomes. We're not setting up the classroom for us. Um,
No.
we need to be setting up the classroom for the students who are teaching. And if
Mm-hmm.
this is and the students we're teaching and who are learning, and if this is the optimal learning space,
Yes.
then why aren't we doing it? Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of the teachers at a course I was at recently said, "Oh, but it gives the kids ownership of the room when they see their art on the walls." And the presenter said, "But do you think it's the art on the walls that gives the kids the sense of ownership? It's the
Mhm.
feeling they get when they enter the classroom, that they've had experiences of success, and they're welcome, and they can achieve, and they're supported. That's what gives them a sense of ownership, not a picture on the wall." So
Mm.
yeah.
Mm.
And there's other places in the school or outside the classroom or on the back wall where you can have your art, but it's for that explicit teaching, having the teacher seeing everybody. I
Mm.
mean, some classrooms you go into and everyone is turned sideways and they've all got a crick in their neck looking at the board. So it's about using the furniture you've got and
Mm.
rearranging your room the best you can. So yeah, and
Yeah,
it does.
yeah.
Game changer was the word that came up over and over again.
Game changer. Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's fascinating because yeah, I have seen it's a little different for me working in a one-on-one 1 to 2 environment. But
Mm,
yeah, I actually still remember sitting in the classroom back the old year 7 for Form 1, the year 7 now is the old Form 1. And yeah, we sat in rows. And
mm,
if we had to do group work, we basically picked up our desks and shifted them into a little group,
Yes. Yeah.
or the people in front turned back and you
Yes.
spoke to the people behind you. So
Mm.
yeah, I mean we're sort of coming in that full circle again. So yeah,
Just
it's
about supporting, as people, as we make these changes. We've had some fabulous PLD going on over the last year or so, and even years before that, we've, been well on the journey of structured literacy well before this
mm,
government, and fabulous PD. But we have to think that, we have to be kind to ourselves as
mm,
teachers that are new to this. There's a lot to learn, and it takes a long time.
mm.
So, I say to teachers, just do one thing at a time. Get your sound pack going well. Get your explicit handwriting going well.
Yeah.
Don't try to do everything at once, and be kind to yourself. And the other last bit of advice, before I talk about one of your questions around policy, was that for the people that have, there's still an element of teachers that know that what they're doing is working well, and they've been reluctant to change. And I have heard, whispers about the school is not going to change. And but I think we have to think about, yes, it's worked well for a lot of students, but has it worked well for all
All
students?
students.
All students, and structured literacy done with fidelity works well for all students, unless they're your students with particular specific, more complex needs. But we have to think about what the children deserve, and is it what you want to do as a teacher, what you'd prefer to do, or is it what will work for those children? So, give it a go. Just give one thing a go at a time. There's lots of support out there. Um, but we need to be really thinking about what the children deserve, and that's evidence-based practice. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Nikki, I that's awesome. And this has been such a brilliant conversation. Yeah, I've learnt such a lot about you as a person, and thank you for being so generous with sharing your journey with me today. Was there anything else that you
I
that
just wanted to talk
on
about
top?
you said was about any teachers or information for or advice for teachers or policy makers. And I wanted to
Mm,
say that it's really crucial that we still have support for tier 3, because what's happening with losing RTLit, and I'm not going to be here to talk about that too much, but we have to look really carefully into what's going to be in support for tier 3, because tier 3 are your children with dyslexia or neurodiverse students, or those specific learning needs. And even though the teachers are getting this fantastic training, they don't have time to work one-on-one with a number of students, and they don't have the knowledge. So it really worries me that that ongoing support that RTLit give to schools is going to be gone, because at the moment we're just at the end of an email or end of a phone call to every
mm,
teacher in New Zealand between us, and that support is not going to be there, which is really, really sad. So yes, the PLD is going to address tier 1 and tier 2 over time, but it's not going to happen, overnight. And I really feel that we've pulled the pin on the tier 3 support too soon.
mm,
Yeah, so that's really disappointing for those children with dyslexia, and I really feel for the teachers that are having to try and manage those students, and that ongoing support in terms of
mm,
coaching and mentoring by themselves. So
mm.
yeah, there's my little shameless plug for the fabulous resource teachers of literacy in New
Yeah.
Zealand.
Yeah, no, and I think like someone who is as inspiring as you are and has achieved so much in this role, um, that's where the gap is going to be. There's going to be a gap left there. Um, yeah, when
And I
teachers
feel
like,
feel for those parents who are sitting at home knowing that their child is not
mm,
going to be eligible for that, that one-on-one intensive targeted
mm,
support. But
mm,
the teachers are doing the best they can, and that's all
they
we
are.
can
Yeah,
ask for. And we've got some fabulous practice going on in
we
New
have.
Zealand. I
Yeah,
get blown away when I walk in classrooms in Whanganui. We've got some great work going on, so that's
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Oh, no, that's absolutely awesome. So Nikki, thank you so much for sharing your journey with me today. Yeah, I can't wait to have this out for everybody to have a listen. You just had such an amazing um starting off as a hairdresser and then moving into teaching, and then resource teacher of literacy,
Yeah.
and the future beyond at the moment
Yeah.
will, yeah,
Unknown, but
unknown,
it's
but
been a journey and it's been
yeah.
amazing. It just, I always when I do workshops, I always think about and also say to kids sometimes, even though you might not do well at school, just keep
Mm,
trying because you don't know what happens in the future. You can go on and get a degree and a couple of postgrad diplomas, and so don't give up on yourself. Just
mm,
keep going, and yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, it's been a journey, but it's yeah. But thank you for having me. It's been an
Oh,
honour.
absolutely. You're welcome. All right. So, Mahi for joining us on Love Literacy Inspired.
Yeah.
And if this conversation lit a spark, please share it with someone who will love it too. And you can follow me. We're going to have this on YouTube and it will be on Spotify. And until next time, keep sharing stories, asking questions, and loving literacy. Thank you, Nikki.
Kia ora. Thank you, Heather. That's wonderful.